just to refresh everybody. So last year, I mean, I guess if you had to sum it up, it was really a very injury plagued season, very unfair to grade the team. They get off to a great start, 4-0. They almost ended the season on an 8-game losing streak. As you said, they got that win at least to get something positive going into the offseason without a bowl. They wind up losing. It was, 5 of 7 by 8 or less, 3 by 3 or less. And a lot of that had to do with the offense. They were down to their 5th quarterback. And again, injuries and lack of production. So there's a lot there, but most of it definitely on the offense. And so that's why it was important to bring in a new offensive coordinator and a new quarterback that played with said coordinator. So talk about this New Mexico connection Utah has right now.
Yeah, I think this is the reason they brought in a new offensive coordinator is they needed to adapt with the times, right? Andy Ludwig was a guy that if you could understand his playbook and you could mature through the system, you could probably get it down and do well, which is what Cam Rising did. The problem is when you didn't have a quarterback, aka their freshman last year, true freshman, it became a disaster because there wasn't a lot of opportunities to be able to adapt, especially to a transfer portal where there's guys churning, a lot of movement there. With what they brought in with Jason Beck, it's much more similar to what a lot of the high school players know already or schools are using. It's a spread offense, RPO based. There's a lot of it's less pro style offense where you have different things, different triggers, different things that you have to look at from the defense. It's far easier in the sense that, okay, you're an X receiver. This is your route. Y receiver, here's this. You may have some different plays off of that. But for the most part, it's a pretty simplistic without being overly, simple, if that makes sense.
Sure,
so yeah. I think to them, that's what they needed for the changing times is they were having so much turnover in the transfer portal, trying to get guys in, but those guys weren't having success because their offense was way too complicated. It was like reading a Bible to try to figure out what was going on. So Jason Beck brings a lot of that. Devin Dampier obviously understands that offense and is pretty solid in that. Had a great season last year, led New Mexico to the 4th best offense in the country, with a team that on paper should be far worse than what Utah should be, right?
Yeah, so New Mexico. Yeah.
I mean, they're fine, but I mean, Utah should be better, and I think that's kind of the impetus to why they made this change, and it just made perfect sense, the timing and everything. So it should work, but injuries play a factor, and everything kind of factors in that way.
Does Devin have another year after this?
Yeah. He's going in his junior year, if I remember right.
Okay. Well, that's important to have that extra year. You don't want it to be like a one and done situation. And then where are you next year? So, and so Zach's little brother, is he definitely the backup?
He's in a battle for that QB2 spot. The problem that he had is he had so much confidence going into the season last year, but he was kind of the one that everybody focused their frustrations in on for that bad offense.
Okay.
Granted, he made his own mistakes, right? Like there was things that he needed to do better, but he was never really given a great opportunity because that offense was so complex. And it was like he didn't know half of the season if he was even going to start that game. And so it was like this challenging situation to try to get him available. And it's just a true freshman trying to go through the motions, trying to get there. And it was tough. So, I mean, he's definitely in the mix, but I think his confidence has taken a hit. They also have a true freshman quarterback in Bird Ficklin who fits probably more the Devin Dampier style of play. Okay. And so that it'll be really interesting to see how they balance that and see who's going to be that QB2. But Isaac has potential for sure.
Yeah, I'll just pop up from time to time the Ourlads current depth chart. And by the way, if you happen to notice any changes, differences, please let us know because we know these aren't perfect because it is college football and anything can change as far as the depth chart. Okay, so there it is right there. All right, so I tell you what, let's stick on the transfer angle. So again, Dampier comes in, but there was also a receiver that came in. That's Ryan Davis, right? So Davis comes in from New Mexico. Larry Simmons comes in as one of the top receivers at Southern Miss. And Tobias Merriweather, I remember Merriweather talking to Kyle Kelly, who is the main recruiting analyst that we've talked to at Notre Dame for several years, talked very highly of Tobias a few years ago when things didn't work out. He goes to Cal last year, and now he is on Utah. So just talking about the receivers, including Otto Tia, by the way, who comes from Utah State. And we actually have him listed as a tight end. I don't know what the situation is there, but we know he was productive at Utah State. So talk about the receivers, because Dampier looks like he's got some weapons.
Yeah, just quick on Otto Tia. He did move to tight end. They feel like his skill set and his length and everything fits there. So, that'll be interesting how he moves there. But in terms of wide receiver, I mean, this is going to be the position group on the offensive side of the ball that has the least amount of understanding, right? Like there's a lot of unknowns just simply because you don't know what you're going to get out of these receivers. As you mentioned, Tobias Merriweather, there's a lot of praise about who he could be, but it's always been could. Yep. There hasn't really been a lot of production to showcase that. Had some injuries that, that have hampered that. He is 100% though a wide receiver 1 type talent. And if he can take effect here at Utah got a slam dunk in his transfer, right? So I think he's effective, and he's a guy that can absolutely be somebody that can be a difference maker for Utah in a vertical threat. But it's going to be a challenge to see how that goes, right? Outside of that, Ryan Davis, he's a guy that because he came from New Mexico is just simply going to have a leg up on this offense. Kyle Whittingham has said that they're going to pretty much, it's not a quite carbon copy, but it's going to be pretty similar to what they ran at New Mexico. And so just having that familiarity with the offense as well as Devin Dampier is going to give him a leg up on that competition. So I think you're going to have some opportunities there where he can be the guy. I don't think he's, your star guy that everybody's going to go to, but sure. I mean, in these short to intermediate route passes, I think he can be absolutely effective. Larry Simmons, there's been a lot of good talk about Larry and his offseason progression. It wasn't, it wasn't one of those things where he wasn't talented. It was more just a situation of, can he be able to adapt to Utah and be able to do it? And by all accounts, it sounds like in the offseason workouts, he's been one of those guys that have really taken effect. So we'll see. I mean, right now on paper, like you have right there, they're set up to be able to have success, right? Like, yeah. And I don't know that Utah has to have like this dynamic passing attack. They're never going to be an air raid type offense. They're always going to establish the run first. And so I think what Utah needs more than anything is to make sure that they can at least have enough deep threat, opportunities that it allows them to be able to relax that defense. And then Devin Dampier and all the other guys that are going to run the ball or do whatever they're going to do, it's going to make it much easier for them. So I think, although not integral necessarily to like the main focus of this team, they're 100% the X factor in terms of just being able to be productive and allowing Utah to be able to be successful. But I don't know that you need like these otherworldly type receivers for Utah to be successful.
Yeah, and speaking of the running game, because again, Devin, last year, I guess the big deal was that he did do a good job throwing the football, but for the most part, it was because he was able to rush as well for over 1,000 yards and 19 rushing touchdowns. But keep in mind, he did have 12 interceptions and 12 touchdown passes. He can't, and that's playing for the Mountain West. This is Big 12. So they need to run he has to be better, but they also need to run the football because they don't want him to be in that situation if they can afford it. But anyway, speaking of that running game, no more Micah Bernard, but Wayshawn Parker comes over from Washington State, had a really good season last season as I believe, a redshirt freshman. And also, and even a couple other guys they brought in, Rogers and Duke, nice production. I think they combined for somewhere about 500-600 yards last year. So yeah, this is, like you said, this is about running the football. Parker clearly the number one, it looks like. Is there anyone else besides Parker that you think we should keep an eye on? But let's stick with Parker first of all and some of those transfers.
Yeah, Parker 100% is that guy, barring somebody just absolutely showing out and fall. I don't believe that's going to be the case. Parker came in expecting to be the top guy. He was a number 4 rated recruit coming out of in the transfer portal. So, I mean, this is a guy that has a lot of expectations placed on him. They feel really excited about him as establishing the run, especially if you compare him with Devin. Those two can really work off each other. He too is bringing his running back coach to Utah, so he has a connection with the guys. So they've got a great connection in that ability with Mark Atuaya. This is a great situation where their top skills players have a lot of the guys that they've already been coached by. So, and Mark Atuaya and Jason Beck have worked together in the past. So it's some nice consistency there that works. Now, beyond that, Nakari Rogers, he's a guy that, once again, New Mexico guy, he's going to understand that offense and he's going to understand what to do. He's kind of one of your bruising backs, the guy that's probably like a short yardage situation,
Okay.
third down type guy. I think you're going to see him quite a bit. He may even push Parker for some opportunities to kind of get some extra runs, but he's a guy that I think really took a hold in spring and made the best of it and can be a great asset for Utah. Beyond that, we haven't seen Bryce Duke because he transferred in the spring portal. So it's going to be a question on how he fits into that system. But beyond that, Devin Green comes over from UNLV, solid player, kind of more of an off-speed back. They want to utilize him, but he's not going to probably get as many carries as anybody else. And then there's Daniel Bray, that freshman. He excuse me, he made some impressive plays in spring game. And they talked a lot about kind of his ability to kind of get off the edge and get into open field. He's going to be utilized probably not even in just a running back role. They're going to utilize him in a maybe it's a gadgetry plays or other situations that I think you're probably going to see him on the field as long as he continues to make that progress.
Now, I saw that as far as the running situation, I know we're only going 5 deep here. You mentioned Bray. Was Gullery a 4-star by Rivals?
Yes. So he's a guy that reclassified. And so
Okay.
he's incredibly young. He just barely turned 17, if I'm not mistaken. So
Okay.
he's going to be a guy that's going to factor in, but I think it's more probably next year.
Okay.
I would be surprised if he factors in this year.
All right. Sticking with the transfer deal, we've got one player that could potentially start. What do you think about that? Do you think Blake Cotton? Do you think he's going to start? Do you think he's slated to start? Or do you think any other transfers on defense might be able to either start or be important contributors?
It'll probably be him or Don Saunders who are fighting for that corner spot. There's, they both had their successes in spring. I'm trying to remember. I think one of them got injured I think it was actually Blake that got injured slightly. And so that kind of set him back a bit. But by all accounts, it sounds like those two guys are in the mix. Jalen Mosen and then JC Hart, they're in the mix as well as guys that can develop. We just haven't seen a ton from them.
Okay.
And so it'll be interesting to see kind of how they factor in. But I would assume that kind of what you have there is going to be pretty consistent. Rock Caldwell, he's had some up and down moments. I think they like his potential. It just needs to click a little bit more. And I think if he made that progress over the summer breaks and he comes into fall camp and I think there is true potential that he could be in that rotation. It's just a question of kind of how he developed in the offseason.
Okay, let's kind of slide now into the top recruits because a couple of guys here are also 4-stars here. Carson Kafusi, and also Christian Thatcher. And matter of fact, I can pop up the current Rivals recruiting ranking here, which for Utah was 44 with the 3 4-stars. They also had a high 3-star quarterback in Becker, so we could talk about him too. But talk about those defenders and whether or not you think they or any other defenders, as far as true freshmen, might have a chance to contribute.
Yeah, Carson Kafusi is probably the guy. He's come into the system and already in spring was impressing a lot of people, at least on the defensive side of the ball, right? He's a guy that really just kind of fits the prototypical style that Utah wants in the defensive players. And so I wouldn't at all be surprised if he's at least factoring in there. He's aggressive. He can create some havoc plays and get into the backfield quite a bit. So I think they really like what he can provide. Beyond that, it's going to be a question of who you get outside of that. You do have some other players like Christian Thatcher, but he's just got so many players in front of him that I don't think you're going to see anything there. Like I said, with Racine Hillary, that's tough. JJ Buchanan, he can play both sides of the ball. Right now, they have him listed as a wide receiver, and that's probably where he's going to play primarily. But
Okay.
there is potential that he could flip on the defensive side as well and be a great talent there. So
Okay.
he's a guy that is at least factoring in as a freshman that could be on both sides of the ball.
So it doesn't really sound like there's going to be a whole lot of contributing coming from the true freshman class of 2025.
Most likely not. I mean, there's some sporadic things that might happen, but yeah, I would say, Kafusi is probably at the top of that list if there was anybody.
All right. And then what about the quarterback I mentioned? Again, he's not here. We have Ficklin here and Coward here. Becker was a little bit higher ranked by rivals, but that doesn't mean anything. So what about the freshman group of quarterbacks? Do you think it's a good class?
Yeah, so Wyatt Becker, just kind of as a side note, he actually transferred out in spring, kind of unceremoniously. He didn't even announce it. He didn't do anything.
Well, screw him then.
Yeah, it was interesting because he was kind of
Just kidding.
He was set on the old kind of style of what Utah was running with their offense.
Okay.
And so he was just kind of casual damage from that. I think it just happened that way. They still honored his scholarship and he wanted to, it just didn't work out. So
Okay.
Bird Ficklin, though, I mentioned him a little bit when we were talking about Isaac Wilson. This is a guy that they love. Honestly, of all the quarterbacks in their throwing motions, Bird may have the prettiest and best spiral of the bunch. So there's true potential with him. He's another dual threat quarterback. He's put on a bunch of weight in the offseason. He's working hard. Isaac, you would, like you mentioned, even, it sounds like the incumbent backup that would fit that role. But Bird is 100% pushing him, and they really love what he's able to do on the field. And he just is another one of those true dual threat quarterbacks that has a lot of upside and potential.
All right. Let's take a look at the overall team here now, starting on offense, talking about, of course, all the transfers and the some of the freshmen first. But let's go with that offensive line. So this is really what's going to make or break Utah's offense, isn't it? Because this is considered one of the better offensive lines in college football, led by Spencer. Is it Fano?
Fano.
So yeah, I mean, it really looks like the sky's the limit for Fano.
Yeah, he's a guy that is getting first round grades, even top 10 type grades. A lot of people are really high on him as a returning tackle coming into the league this year. This offensive line will go as Spencer Fano goes, right? But on the opposite side at the left tackle is Caleb Lomu, who is honestly quietly putting together a similar path, and he's actually getting first round kind of love as well. There's a lot of people, depending on who you talk to, that they actually like Caleb more than Spencer. And so you've got two guys that they feel like can be really solid, anchoring the ends of that offensive line, which obviously is incredibly important. Some of their problems last year were in the interior offensive line, but that was also part of teams loading the box. You also had a freshman quarterback. They knew that they could just absolutely disrupt. But these three interior linemen are incredibly veteran players who have been in the system for a very, very long time. There hasn't been any turnover there with them. They know their roles. I mean, this is as consistent and as veteran of a line that you can get at Utah. And you've got two, first round talents potentially anchoring that. So like you said, this is the engine that's going to make it work. For as good as Devin Dampier can be, and he only took 4 sacks last year with a much worse offensive line, you have to like what this can be, assuming that this offensive line can actually live up to those expectations.
Who do you think is the biggest upside on the interior between those three?
Ooh, Tanoa Togiai is probably he probably could be there. Michael Mokafisi started since he was a freshman, but he has some lapses every once in a while, or at least it was a soft, I can't remember, but he's been there a long time. Jaron Kump, he's been there a long time as well and has been injured a little bit. But I'd say Togiai probably has the best opportunity available. He's big, he's got a great frame, and he's had probably the most consistency. They had problems early on last year and the year before, and they've thrown him in, and suddenly the line it works, right? So like he's kind of the erasure of all that stuff. He just is a good, consistent guy that no nonsense guy. Like nobody knows who this guy is, but he's going to come in there and absolutely make the offensive line that much better.
Okay. Now let's talk about this defense, because again, this is really, speaking of engines making things roll. This is what's been the really the biggest asset for the program for many years now. If you look at it, they've had a top 30 defense in 7 of the last 8 years. All 8 of those years, they had a top 40 ranked defense. They've had some really good top 5, top 10 defenses sprinkled in between, even just a couple of years ago. Last year was a little bit of a dip, but again, there were injuries. But talk about this defense. What's the strength? I don't really. It looks like that they're going to need somebody to take over being the big sack guy, the big pressure the quarterback guy. So we'll talk about some of the star type players that we need to be keeping an eye on.
Yeah, this defense at Utah, it's never really a question that they're going to be good. They may have years that they're not as talented as prior or whatever, but you can pretty much bank that Utah knows what it's doing on defense. And I think you're going to get a lot of that this year. Just starting with the defensive line, you do have Dallas Vakalahi, who picked up last year, really kind of coming into his own. He's expected to be a breakout player there in the interior part of that. Aliki Vamahi, he's a veteran guy who's been there forever. He's had some injury problems, and so that could potentially keep him out. But you've got 2 guys that understand their assignments. They fit the model that Utah wants to run, and they're going to clog those lanes much better probably than last year, just simply based on kind of how they're utilized. And then on the outside, Logan Fano, so Spencer Fano's older brother, who actually lines up against him. Those 2 have gone against each other forever.
That must be fun.
Yeah, they have their fun.
Yeah.
Logan Fano, he had an ACL injury a couple of years ago that kind of he was able to play last year, but it slowed him down a bit. But he's a guy that if he can get back up to full potential, and it sounds like he's there, he was getting into the backfield with regularity, creating havoc plays, getting those sacks, getting everything that they need to. He has that potential to be that guy. John Henry Daly has really kind of come into his own as well. Utah feels really good about being able to rush that line, feel like they've got the physicality to be able to overpower teams.
Okay.
And then behind that, you've got Paul Fitzgerald, who's, I would say John Henry Daly and Paul Fitzgerald, at least going into fall camp, are probably 1A, 1B type players. They really like what they've got with both of them. They feel confident there. And then even Cash Dillon is another guy that he was a freshman last year, came in. They were already talking his praises last year, and I think he's only made more progress this year. So they feel really confident in where they're at there. I can continue with linebackers.
Yeah, do they play 2 or 3 linebackers most of the time?
It depends. They'll have different thing. It depends on if they put the nickel out there.
Okay.
If they don't have the nickel out there, they'll sometimes play with the 3 linebackers, which is when you'd get Lander Barton, Levani Damuni, and Jonathan Hall.
And that's a strength. That's a strength of their defense, isn't it?
Absolutely. Those are 3 veteran players. Jonathan Hall is a little bit more. He hasn't been in that system as long, but Levani Damuni, smart guy, transferred from Stanford, been in the system for a while. Lander Barton was projected to be kind of the star. He was like a fringe 5-star guy that is just a legacy kid. Their whole family's been there. Cody Barton is in the NFL right now. His other brother Jackson Barton's in the NFL. This is a family that just knows football, and so these linebackers are going to be pretty solid. Jonathan Hall, he'll probably get a little bit more play over Levani Damuni just simply because of his youth and his ability to be able to just make impact plays. But get all 3 of them on the field, and there's not really a big weakness among any of them. And they've got other guys in the as backups, but I'd say that's your 3 star players of that defense for sure.
And we talked about Cotton and a couple of those transfers in the secondary. There's a couple of guys that seem to stand out: Johnson at safety and Snowden at nickel.
Yes, Smith Snowden 100% is a guy that they have him as nickel, but because of his effectiveness on the field, there may be chances where he plays corner because they want him in the game, impacting it at all times. And so, depending on how they utilize this defense, they want to have him on the field. So he's a guy that they love. He's a ball hawking player. He can go toe to toe with a lot of these players. He's really learned that nickel position well to go up against some of these bigger players. And he does his best to be able to just be what a difficult nickel position does. Outside of that, Teo Johnson and then Rabbit Evans, both of those guys have veteran experience. Teo is one of those guys that he's also getting some pretty high NFL love. I think people love kind of his ability to just kind of stay out there and roam the field. He can hit hard. He has great ball vision where he understands where the ball's going to go, and he gets there pretty well with regularity. But Rabbit Evans has been taking tremendous strides as well. And as much as people are talking up Teo Johnson, there's maybe more potential with Rabbit Evans based on the talk that they've had. So we'll see. He made some pretty good strides last year, but I think based on the conversations that have been had, it sounds like he's just kind of unlocked a new potential this year. So, that back linebackers and secondary seems pretty solid for Utah, assuming that even their front four isn't that solid, which they will be. So, I mean, it's a defense that's pretty well rounded.
Okay. And special teams have got a freshman. Matter of fact, both the new kickers. One's a transfer. The other is a freshman. And I hear this Dylan Curtis kid kicked over a 60-yarder in high school. So he's got a boomer. And if looks like he's going to start potentially from day one, that would be a bonus.
Yeah, this is kind of the piece where Utah's been missing for a little bit. They, for a while, were known as kind of like the specialist university, right? Like you bring your kickers or punters to Utah, and they just kind of fell off for a while. Dylan is one of those guys that they love so much. In practice and in the spring game, they're just trying to throw things at him to see if he can miss, because he's just been consistent. We'll see how that goes in real games, but he does hold the record here in the state of Utah for the high school ranks in terms of the longest kick. They love his range, and they feel like they can do so much more with him, obviously, because they have more range. So the kind of the subtle one that Utah fans are most excited for is just for touchbacks, though. Utah has struggled to get touchbacks on their kickoffs. Wow. And they're really excited just to have that. I mean, it got to a point where it was so bad a few years ago where once Utah finally got a touchback, the whole crowd cheered because that's how frustrating it was. So that kind of goes to the level of how important he can be, not just in the actual like points kicking game, but just in flipping the field in terms of touchbacks and stuff. So
yeah, you see that's the cool thing about college football is when you, especially when you are getting these kids from your own backyard and you follow them and you can see them coming and you're like, and then they're there, and it's just really special to follow a kid from your own backyard and to see, like you said, I can imagine that was the thought process even last year, like, oh, I just can't wait till next year when we get when Dylan comes, and that's special. That's part of the game that's really fun.